Let me help you become a more efficient gambler. In this video, I'm sharing practical advice on how you can predict your own football matches. Knowledge is power, and the aim of this channel is to empower you. If you like what I'm doing, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button for more. I will do this in a presentation format. Let's crack on. So we titled this Predicting Football Matches Betting Tutorial. It's the start of the season in Europe, and so now what we've got to do is try to fathom out how teams are going to perform. And to do that, we're going to put teams in an expected finishing order. So what you do is you take a league, and then we're going to have to try to figure out how the teams are going to finish at the end of the season. To do this, we're going to use last season's data and stats and probably a bit more. Look at a couple of seasons before. You'll also need to consider any circumstances. Now, I wrote Chelsea there in brackets because that's just to remind me that, Chelsea had a real funny season last year. They wasn't motivated. There was a big change in ownership. There was big problems with the staff. But now, they've got a new coach. They're going to have new players, and it's going to be a totally different season. So Chelsea have got one or two things going for them and something going against them. What's going against them is that they're not playing in any of the European competitions, and that means, the top players are not wanting to play for this team anymore. But on the other hand, because they don't have that burden of playing in Europe, they're going to have this advantage. So we could mark Chelsea up definitely for sure. They're not going to finish mid-table like they did last season. But, we would personally be looking at sort of 4th, 5th. This is something for you to figure out yourself. But, we're going to have to do this for each league. Now, as far as anything else that we need to take into consideration is the players and the manager changes. You're going to look at players that are coming into a team. Have they strengthened it? Is a new manager arrived? Is that also, going to be a factor? Or have they been a selling club? Have they lost their best players? It's something that you're going to need to take into consideration before you do that sort of placement. Promoted teams, they're going to be a little bit harder to predict, but you can go across again over the last couple of seasons. Some of them on a sort of yo-yo rebound effect. They've gone down for one season, come back up. You can expect something probably similar. You're going to have to see if they've, again, invested money in new players or, whatever they've done. But basically, the moral of the story is that we're going to have to look at the XP, expected points for each team. Now, another big factor is the league dynamics. It's very important that you understand the different leagues in Europe, if that's where you're betting. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. So the average number of goals per game in the German Bundesliga is 3.17. Whereas in Italy Serie A, it's just 2.56. So, you can imagine a lot more games are going to be over 2.5 goals in the Bundesliga. But of course, the bookmakers know that too. This is something that we need to stay afloat of. Try to get an understanding, what to expect from each league. Also, with if we use the same two leagues, the percentage of home, draw and away wins was, in the Bundesliga, it was 47.4% of home teams won last year, 24.5% drew, and 28.1% finished, the winner was the away team. Italy Serie A is 42.4%. 26.3% for the draw and 31.3% for the away team. So as you can see there, the home advantage in the Bundesliga was about 5% higher last season. If we put that in odds terms, you would have to be averaging odds of over 2.11 to make a profit if you was betting all the Bundesliga teams, all the home teams simultaneously, right? So take that into consideration because it's just like an overview of what happened in that league. It doesn't mean it's going to happen this year, but it's something to take on board. As the season progresses, we're going to need to re-evaluate the points expectancy. Now, obviously, as the data comes in, as you're watching games, as you're seeing the results, you can start to bring that into fruition. The only thing I would say is, by the halfway point of the season, it becomes a little bit more serious. After 2 or 3 games, I wouldn't get too deep into it. I wouldn't take it, but you're going to have to start adapting this towards last year's results and, the expectancy before the season started, and try to find that balance. The player ratings can help if you can, like I say, if you can really go through the clubs and try to get yourself a big understanding of who's who and give them player ratings. It can help you get a better understanding of what's going on. So also update the XG, which is expected goals per game. If you see after 5 games that, say, the German Bundesliga is producing only 2.8 goals a game, whereas last year it was, 3 point something, then, the moral of the story is you can probably go a little bit down on it. So the expected goals comes down a little bit. You need to stay informed about the squad changes, anything that's happening within the squad, players coming in, injured players returning, injured players going out, suspended, whatever. This is very important. As the season progresses, the yellow cards will start after 5, they get a red card, and so on. So, bear that in mind. So keep checking all the league dynamics, see if they're still the same, see if they sort of balance or if they're not. Now, as far as major factors goes in predicting football matches, you're going to have to consider the team news. But not just, I wrote in brackets the starting 11, but you're going to have to think a little bit deeper because, some clubs have got a strong bench, some clubs have got no other player to rely on. So if there was like an injury during the game and they lost a senior player, then they could have a problem replacing that player. Whereas other clubs, it would be no big deal. Manchester City, they wouldn't have any real problems with it, would they? Also, I just want to mention with the weather conditions. Now, people think when it rains, there's going to be less goals, but there's 2 points of that. If it rains very heavily and the pitch gets heavy, right, there will be less goals because, as players, it'll be much easier to defend, as the attackers won't be able to control the ball as easily. And also, you could chip the ball from 20 metres out, lob the goalkeeper, and it could actually stand still on the line without going in. Whereas, if it's just a light rain, it could actually increase the amount of goals. And the reason for that is that the ball slips off the surface faster. It's also ricochets off of players. If it's a leg going through, the goalkeeper has drizzle in his eyes. So just bear that in mind. Take into consideration the weather conditions. And as far as the distance and journey goes, now, I just want to mention that, for example, in the MLS in the US, as they're traveling sometimes 5,000 miles to play a game. It's ridiculous, as far as we're concerned. But obviously, they're going to a different time zone, jet lag, it could be. It could also be, a hazardous journey. But more importantly, they're going to a different climate and several other issues. Also, local derby matches, the away team is going to be bringing a lot of fans with them, and it's not so hazardous, so the results tend to be a little bit more balanced. So just try to think about how the distance and journey affects games. Also, the motivation level, that comes more towards the end of the season, doesn't it? As teams don't need points anymore and other teams do need points, that urgency is supposed to inspire efficiency. Whether it does or not is another story, but, take that into consideration. The bookmakers certainly do. Sometimes they go too far on that, but it's something that you need to bear in mind. And as far as the head-to-head goes, you can look how teams have done against other teams in the past, because when they've travelled to that stadium, that could also be a part of the journey. You could also look at the odds that day, how they were, and how they compare to the odds now. But, as the season progresses, you can look at the reverse games, think about the home advantage, think about the change in venues, and so on. Is something to take into consideration. But they are the major factors. Basically, they're what is going to drive your sort of, any kind of algorithm. And on that note, I just want to mention that if you wanted to build a betting module or something, similar to yourself, what you could do is you could convert the XG, the goals, into a point system. You've got goals for, you've got goals against, right? But you could use like the 10-point system, 10 points being 0.25 goals or 40 points per full goal. And then based on the factors that you saw before, you can deduct and add, points So let's just imagine that a top team is missing its number one scorer. You might think he's worth 0.25 goals to that team, so deduct 10 points and so on. I hope, I don't want to really get into sort of building a betting module here because I think it's too complex for most people, but it gives you an idea how to sort of come to a numbers base. Other considerations, again, you're going to need to stay ahead, stay afloat what's happening. If there's rumours knocking around the club, are players due to leave? Or what about players coming in? Look at, particularly pay attention to results after internationals. Now, big teams are obviously a lot more affected. You can imagine Manchester City, right? They're not going to just lose their starting 11. They're probably going to lose the whole squad. They're going to fly away to all the different country teams and represent them. And, then, of course, you've got the Crystal Palace who they're playing at the weekend. They don't have to do that. They can all stay at home and train and prepare for the next game. So you get some weird results after internationals. Playing European competitions, small clubs, that they have a real burden here because they just don't have the resources, unless they put money into the club, the resources are not there, and it could affect those results. It could affect not just those results, it will affect the league results. Often they just want to be the star on the show in Europe or not to concentrate on the league. And so some of these teams, they've been in Europe and they probably get relegated at the end of the season. Bear that in mind. Cup matches, as far as a lot of teams, they use the second team, but you can imagine Manchester City's second team is probably would finish top four in the Premier League if it's played, if it was involved, if they had a Manchester City B team. So I would definitely suggest that you look at past performance, how clubs have done, because it shows you how serious they are actually taking that competition. But cup matches, if you are going to bet on cup matches, try to get a good understanding of what to expect. Other advice that I would like to give is think about the probability of the game, try to put a price to it. Like I say, everything's about the odds. Get a profile on each club, work hard, get a good understanding. Once it's in your head, honestly, it doesn't go away. Put it down on paper, get it into a data format. It really helps you understand and evaluate a lot faster. I just want to also mention that recent results mean less than you actually think. A lot of amateur gamblers, they just look, I just won 2 games on the bounce. They must be hitting form now. But take it with the pinch of salt. Look at the bigger picture. If you are using play evaluations to try to establish the worth of a club, and like I mentioned, by using the transfer market, take into consideration the age. Take, for example, Harry Kane at the moment. If he's going to Bayern Munich for like 100 million, imagine he was 25 years old, then it would be worth 200 million, wouldn't he? Right? And again, take into consideration the age of the player and what they can get out of him. I would definitely suggest that you look a lot at in-play betting. I'm going to link a video at the end of this, by the way, for in-play betting, because it actually teaches you about what to expect. You can look at formations, you can get a better feeling of what's happening. And the other things is that you must understand the odds. Betting is all about the odds, nothing else counts. It really doesn't. You've got to try to put prices on things and bet accordingly. Learn Asian handicaps if you can. You've really got to put in the effort, because Asian handicaps are competitive. They'll give you an advantage. And also, you can shop around and get more money down with Asian handicaps. As far as Pinnacle and Betfair go, I just want to pick up on one thing. They're literally dynamic odds. It's pretty much the same as system. A lot of people think Pinnacle is sharp, but it's actually the market odds from Pinnacle that are sharp. They put in odds, and then the dynamic odds, the buy and sell of different teams brings the odds into fruition, and that's the new market odds, yeah? But what's imperative is that you work on getting the very, very best odds, yeah? And you can do that by using Asian platforms, if it's legal where you are, because you're going to get value. It's all going to get squeezed into one, so you get like 8 different bookmakers all squeezed into one, and you can take the best value with just one click. So that's it for now. You're through to bootcamp again. Thanks for watching. Like I said, I'm going to put you that in-play betting link right up right now. And we're going to catch you in the next one soon. Take care for now. Bye-bye.